Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. We are continuing our series, Mom's Movement and Mindset, how to break through resistance and transform your body and mind. I'm excited to be here. I'm your host, Don Fisher. I have an awesome guest here today. My first time speaking with her. That's Ina Mel. She is a relationship coach who helps single successful women stop wasting time on the wrong men and finally find their king. Her personal struggles have been the driving force that inspired her to become a coach. She experienced her share of heartbreak from witnessing her parents' divorce when she was just 8 years old to attracting emotionally unavailable partners and breaking toxic patterns. In his signature course, an 8-week program, Conscious and Intuitive Dating, was created to help women gain clear vision and clarity on what is standing in their way in life so that they can call on their ideal partner. Her methods are research and experience based and involve working through mindset shifts and developing the self worth needed to attract high quality partners into their lives. Ina has been featured in Social Lifestyle Magazine, Yahoo Finance Top 10 Relationship Coaches, Transforming Lives in 2020, Net News Ledger, and Influencive. She is also a contributor for the Mighty Thrive Global and Brains magazine. Hi, Ina. How are you?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Thank you for being here. Super grateful you're taking time out of your day. So let's jump right in. First question for you. If you could just, in your line of work, just define, I guess, what resistance means to you, and also provide some examples that have come up with clients or potential clients in your line of work.
Yeah, I think this is such a powerful question. So to me, just in general, real quick, so resistance, I would say, is just the act of avoiding, not trusting, being defensive, not accepting, not embracing something. When it comes to what I do, a lot of times that comes up in relationships, obviously. And I would say it's since I specialize working with women primarily, single successful women. A lot of times it comes up in them pretty much putting themselves out there and really being vulnerable and really allowing themselves to be seen. I think it also comes up in relationships quite often, where resistance comes up, for instance, one partner wants to take the relationship to the next level, and they're afraid to pretty much maybe have that difficult and uncomfortable conversation. So they just years pass and then nothing changes, and then it just kind of like comes out of nowhere, and then it puts a strain on the relationship ultimately. So I think we see it in different ways very often, I would say.
Gotcha. And now I don't know if you're comfortable sharing, but I know like offline we kind of talked a little bit about how some of your experience is what drove you to do what you do. I mean, would you want to share it all, like what you went through?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah. So for me, well, I mean, it goes way back. But I would probably say that so when I was in my 20s, I was with someone for a very long time, and we got engaged. And 3 weeks after we got engaged, I actually broke off the engagement because I realized that it wasn't. He was a great person. Just I wasn't ready for marriage at the time, and so it kind of I felt like maybe if I was communicating that I was unhappy years prior, we wouldn't be where we were at that time. So in my own personal life, I think resistance showed up because I was avoiding the fact that I was unhappy in that relationship. I was avoiding that we had problems. And so when the time came to pretty much, get like we got engaged to get married, I got really scared. And so I just broke it off. That was like kind of the beginning of when I realized, okay, things need to change. And then after that, I got into another relationship that I was in for 4 years. And that relationship kind of took a toll in the other direction, where I felt like I found my person and I was ready to get married, and he wasn't. And so we ultimately ended up breaking up. So I think if you take a look at those two examples, resistance did show up for me in one of the examples, and then for my ex in the other.
Yeah, it sounds like at least with you, at least my interpretation of it was like there was like maybe a fear of communicating to break up like the status quo or like the norm. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
on the flip side, it was just, yeah, maybe that fear of commitment of like locking something in. I'm not sure, right? But but yeah, those are definitely two, I think, common examples a lot of people experience.
Yeah. And also, in my last relationship, the one that I was with for 4 years, he was younger than me. He was 5 years younger. So I think going in, I did realize that, okay, I'm going into a relationship to someone who may not be where I'm at emotionally. However, I did take the risk. And so I felt like, when the time came to take our relationship to the next level, he just wasn't ready. And a part of me was okay with that because I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah, no, it seems like you're definitely owning up to your side of the street, which is great because I feel like if more people did that, it would be empowering to them. Um, so if you have somebody who is, they want nothing more than to change. In this case, like they want to get back out there, maybe they want to start dating, or if they're being honest, like they want to get engaged with all this, like this desire to move on to that next step, whatever that may look like for the person. Why would resistance still show up in their life?
Well, I think that resistance shows up in our life on a daily basis. It just might show up in like microwaves, right? Where we don't realize that it shows up. But a lot of times I think it's also just accepting the unknown. I would say like, owning your fears, because we all have fears, whether it's their minimal fears or maximum fears, they're there, they exist. So I think that resistance shows up a lot of times because it's just like the fear of unknown. And then the goal in that situation is to really, I think, come to terms, right? And embrace resistance, embrace the notion that you may not know everything, and kind of go forward, with it, I would say. Like
Yeah,
allow
absolutely.
yourself. Yeah.
For sure. Like giving yourself permission to be uncomfortable or to like feel your feelings in a sense. It seems like you're kind of getting at a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and when it comes to life-changing experiences, like for instance, being vulnerable, putting yourself out there, like let's say you're someone who wants to date, wants to be in a committed relationship, right? It's scary. It's scary to be vulnerable. It's scary to open yourself up for the other person to really see all your flaws, right? And to accept them. A lot of times we don't really have that, I would say, connection with our inner being, or strong enough connection, where we're sometimes even afraid to show ourselves, who we really are, yet alone another person. So so it's kind of there. And so the just being vulnerable, and I would say like, embracing that unknown, realizing, okay, I will put myself out there, whether it's going to work or not. You don't really have that power. You have power over yourself, but not over the other person. So and I think looking at it from that perspective really is very helpful.
Yeah, and also comes down to, which is again just speaking to the discomfort, is if we want something we've never had, we need to do something that we've never done.
Yeah,
And you
right.
talk about being vulnerable and this and that, and it's like some of these emotions and experiences, they've maybe been like at least been perceived to be negative in the past, and so it's hard for someone to do that, and I feel like maybe that could contribute to their blocks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's kind of where I come in, I would say, at least in my line of work, where, we work through a lot of like the heart's desires. We work through figuring out, what are your non-negotiables, trying to figure out exactly what type of partner are you looking for, but more so who you are. Like, what are your interests? What type of things are you into? As opposed to like focusing on attracting the right partner. When if you become the right partner, you attract that type of energy into your space.
Perfect. So can you just take that a little further? That was actually kind of my next question. Like what tips could you provide? Again, right, whether it's somebody, a friend, somebody you're working with, but what tips could you provide them for kind of overcoming that resistance, that anxiety, that fear that is blocking them to help them move forward and maybe get back out there again?
Yeah. So I think that primarily focusing on figuring out, you know, what your values are, figuring out what type of interests you have. So the clearer that you get with yourself, right? Like what type of person you feel like you may be attracted to. And again, going back to the values, what are, you know, top 5 that are like non-negotiables for you within a relationship? And then also creating in your mind, I would say, your ideal partner. What does that mean? That means just, and not sticking to those, you know, to that checklist, but to have an idea. Like for instance, if you're someone who wants to have a family, right? If you're someone who wants to have kids in the next, I don't know, 2 to 5 years, then that's something that needs to be on there. And when you're going on these dates, when you are meeting people, that's something, those are the questions, those are the difficult questions that you should be asking. And you shouldn't ask them when you're like a year into the relationship. You should be asking those questions, you know, primarily when you meet someone, maybe not on the first date, but at least to see, like, do you guys, do you align? Do you have the same goals? Do you have the same values? Because ultimately, I think those are the things that are going to keep you together. And it's going to avoid resistance in the future, right? If you're kind of covering that like early on.
Yeah, so it seems like by kind of like facing that resistance and asking those tough questions early on helps you to avoid the resistance altogether, like later on down the road. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And we
that's
don't do that.
awesome.
Most people don't ask because they just want things to flow. They want things to go smooth. So they just ask surface level questions when they go on dates, which is okay, maybe for the first date. But if you are someone who is dating with the intention of getting married or with the intention of being in a serious relationship, then that's where the questions kind of need to be, you know, a little bit, I would say, different, a little bit on the harder side, where you might not feel comfortable even asking them.
Yeah, and something that, and again, this has just been through my experience. This is not obviously generally across the board. I have seen few instances of this though, where someone has maybe made this statement of like, oh, like, you know, when we get married, things will be better or things will change. And I feel like sometimes with that mindset, it's like just kind of hoping that things are going to change, but not actually being direct and kind of saying and laying out what you want right now. And kind of what you were touching on, I feel like going about it in that way, that leads to problems down the road. Whereas if we were just
Yes,
direct right from the get, it would help.
absolutely. Hoping that, you know, someone is going to change, or hoping that someone is going to want to have kids with you at someday or get married to you someday. You know, in theory it sounds great, but in reality it doesn't do much for you, because as you know, like time just flies, you know, like years just fly by. And you know, the last thing you want to do is waste your time, because that's something that you can never get back, wasted time. So I think just realizing that, again, the clearer you get on what is important for you, the clearer that you get on your own set of values, your desires, your, again, going back to like non-negotiables, your hobbies, things that matter to you, the easier it becomes when you are with someone in a relationship to see, is this, you know, my person? Do they view life in the same eyes as I do or not?
Perfect. Yeah. And I feel like once you kind of have those clear like boundaries or clear borders, it makes it a little bit easier for you to probably make a decision.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying, you know, on the first date to like really throw all those difficult questions out there, but if you are dating with the intention of getting married or to be in a committed relationship, then you know, you're not going to just sit there and ask, you know, those like small talk questions, and be okay with that, or that being enough.
Yeah. So first date, no go. Second date, we're interviewing them. We're putting it on the table.
Well, I feel
um,
like even when you're going out there, subconsciously you are interviewing them already. You just don't realize it yet, but it's out there.
yeah, life is an enrollment game. You know, you're so right. When you're sitting there, you're
Oh, I
enrolling
love
them.
that.
They're enrolling you, and it's basically who's buying into what. But yeah,
I
that's
love
awesome.
that. The
That's
way you put that, an enrollment game. I really like the way you put that out there.
perfect. So I'll just take a percentage if you use that moving forward. Okay. So with potential clients now, if they're considering working with you, for them just to be considering that, it's probably safe to assume or safe to assess that they are looking to make a change. That's why they're coming to you. So working with you, that alone could be part of their resistance, like actually taking that step to move forward with you. So what's something or a few things that you do with those potential clients to kind of coach them out of their comfort zone to kind of take that leap of faith and start working with you and commit to ultimately, you know, their vision, right? Of being with someone or getting married or wherever they may be.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, well, the way that I usually work is when I get on call with a potential client, ultimately, I don't know if this is someone that's going to be a right fit for me or if I'm going to be a right fit for them, right? So, my first thing is I want to find out is like, what are their intentions with me? What are they trying to get out of working with me? And a lot of times it could just be like, well, I work a lot and I'm just trying to attract a good guy. I'm always attracting emotional and available men into my life. And so just by seeing how they respond to certain questions that I ask, I'm able to assess, okay, maybe she really does need the help, or maybe she just wants to validate herself and her reasoning behind why she's not attracting the right type of men into her space. So I think a lot of it has to do with just having that first call, getting on that first call, and just really finding out like what are their intentions with me, what do they want to get out of the coaching with me. And if they don't know that, that's okay too, because then we just kind of start from zero and we work our way up. But for the most part, a lot of these women that I do work with, they just struggle with really balancing their energies, like their masculine and their feminine energies. And so they want to attract an alpha male into their life, but they're not able to. And because they come in with so much dominant energy, so much masculine energy, that a lot of the men are just they freak out, and it just doesn't work for them. So it's not always working with like every single aspect. It's just one thing that needs to be worked on, and other times it might be everything. So it all depends on the person.
It seems like from what you're saying here too, like just being like as specific as possible, like not being vague, not being general, like coming to the table with like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is about how long before I want it, right? Like the more, I guess, clear they can be, it
Yeah.
probably makes it a little bit easier to move forward, I would think.
Absolutely. And and I'm not that person who, like, I don't do like magic tricks, because a lot of times they're like, oh, help me attract a certain person into my space. It sounds great, but ultimately it's for you to become the person that you're meant to be, so that then you put that energy out into the world and then you're the one attracting. It's not, I don't do matchmaking. There's no matchmaking happening. It's just working on you, trying to define all your core values, defining your strengths, and for you to kind of use them towards your advantage. And then you ultimately attract that type of person into your space. And then a lot of times when I do work with them, we do unravel, like, there's a lot of stuff that comes up that perhaps maybe they never knew were the reasons. Like, for instance, I'm working with a girl right now. She always attracts emotional and available men into her life, literally for like the last 10 years. Absolutely amazing girl, great, works, has her own business, but she's constantly attracting emotionally unavailable men. And so when we started working together, ultimately, I wanted to find out, like, what was her childhood like? What was her relationship like with her parents? And through that, we kind of unraveled the fact that, like, her childhood traumas really were part of the reason why she was drawn to these emotionally unavailable men. And then we also do a lot of like attachment work, where we figure out what is her attachment styles. So for her to see, okay, her attachment styles is to be avoidant, right? So, and a lot of people do have avoidant attachment styles. I don't know if you're familiar with the attachment styles or not, but so it's kind of like you start working on one thing, and then we realize, okay, for the next 2 weeks, we're working on something completely different, which is okay.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you could speak on this a little bit more than I could, but in my experience in just like recent years, this is a shift that's taken place in my life, is that I've seen through myself and then through other people, even like my own clients, that a lot of times we're seeking like outward, like trying to take things outside of us to kind of fill and like, oh, if I have the right this or X amount of this, I'll be good, I'll be whole. Where I'm starting to see it's the other way around. Like I just need to my way of being, like I need to be the person I want to be. And then I feel like kind of you were saying, like then the stuff that's outside of me, like that's supposed to come, comes.
Yeah, and I live by that. I mean, I'm proving, I to myself daily, and for my own self, that's what I ended up doing. I ended up just removing myself completely from trying to get validation from the outside world, and ultimately realizing, okay, this is what I need to work on, this is what needs to be fixed, looking at the patterns, right? Because a lot of it has to do with our patterning. People don't realize it. Like even when you're in dating, you attract certain types of people. There is some sort of pattern there, whether you see it or not. And just breaking all those bad habits, bad patterns. I know it sounds like 1, 2, 3. It's obviously not. It's years and years of work. And I would probably say it's probably working on that aspect forever in one way or another, right? And then realizing that, okay, if I'm whole, then I can attract another person who's whole as well, right? And we would come together and create something beautiful, instead of, like you just said, also, getting that validation from the outside.
Yeah, so it's like 200%, two whole people, right, making a relationship versus 50-50, right? Like completing each other.
Yeah, and especially in this generation, I think it's a bit different than our grandparents' generation, and so I think that it's beautiful that we're able to be independent, that women are able to be independent. I think it's beautiful that we have all these resources, and we just need to properly use them. And like, that's all really.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, last question for you, Ina. Can you just speak on how on overcoming some of these resistances, some of these fears and the anxiety helps to develop resiliency or develop strength for someone so that they're able to then face larger challenges moving forward?
Yeah, I think that because we are creatures of habit, I think routine becomes like automatic for us. And I think that what happens is when we're going through resistance, right, old wounds end up opening up for us. Old belief system, old patterns. And if we're able to overcome that, we become resilient, we become stronger. We realize that if we can overcome this, then we can pretty much overcome absolutely anything in our life. So looking at it kind of like, um, it's like you shed a part of yourself and like a new version of you kind of emerges.
I love that. And it all starts with getting uncomfortable. But and if you can just take that small step, it's like little by little, almost like the caterpillar, right? It's like
Yes,
little by little,
yes,
you come out and you transform to a new version of yourself.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, awesome. So, Inamel, thank you so much for taking time. Everybody, again, watching at home, this is Mom's Movement and Mindset: How to Break Through Resistance and Transform Your Body and Mind. I'm Don Fisher. Ina, I can't say it enough. Thank you so much for taking time
Thank
today. That
you.
was awesome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this, and have a great day.
Thank you.